My name is Amir. For most of my life, I was a soldier for the Islamic Republic of Iran. I was taught to fight, to hate, and to die for my faith. And one day, on a dusty road near the border, a bomb ensured I did. For a time I can't measure, I was dead. But I didn't see the paradise promised in the Quran. I met someone else. I met Jesus. And the first thing he showed me is why I'm risking my life to speak to you. He revealed that the sincere prayers of my family, my friends, and millions of my people were not reaching God. They were being hijacked. That single truth shattered everything I had ever believed. But for you to understand the weight of what Jesus showed me and what he revealed next about the spiritual war we're all in, I need to tell you how I ended up on that road. I was born in a small village outside Tehran. My family was devout. Islam was our identity, our honor. I joined the Revolutionary Guard as a young man, filled with a fire I believed was from God. I was a true believer, ready to die for a cause I thought was holy. I never imagined that my devotion was aimed at the wrong target. I'm going to take you back to that moment, to the flash of white heat and the sound of the world tearing apart. I'm going to show you exactly what I saw on the other side. Before I do, I need you to join me in this mission. Please subscribe to this channel, like this video, and click the bell so you don't miss the rest of what he revealed. And I have to ask you, before we go any further, have you ever felt that there is a spiritual battle for the soul of the Muslim people? Type, "I am praying" in the comments below. To understand how that first revelation from Jesus could shatter a man's soul, the truth that our prayers were being stolen, you have to understand who I was. My name is Amir, and I was born in the shadow of the Zagros Mountains. For us, Islam was everything. It was the air we breathed, our family's honor. I remember waking before dawn to the sound of the adhan echoing through our village. I'd wash my face and hands in the cold water, the ritual grounding me, and kneel on the worn prayer rug beside my father. That connection, that feeling of submitting to God's will, it was the most real thing in my life. That devotion is what led me to the Revolutionary Guard. I wasn't forced. I went eagerly, filled with a righteous fire. I truly believed I was a holy warrior, a defender of the one true faith against the corruption of the West. We were taught that they were the enemy, and I accepted it without question. My faith was my shield and my sword. The thought that my sincerity, my willingness to die for my beliefs, could be directed at the wrong target wasn't just an offensive idea. It was impossible. I was on God's side, and I was willing to kill and die to prove it. On that last day, the air was thick with heat and the smell of diesel. We were on a routine patrol near the border, the sun beating down on the armor of our truck. I remember feeling tired, the tension of the region a constant weight on my shoulders, but my resolve was as strong as ever. I was thinking of my family, of the honor I was bringing them by serving. I was a soldier of the Islamic Republic, a man of unshakable faith, doing my sacred duty. That certainty was the last thing I felt before the world exploded in a flash of white heat. The first thing I saw was a glint of metal on the side of the road. It was just a flicker, a trick of the sunlight. A split second later, there was no sound, just a flash of pure white heat that felt like it tore the world apart. The pain was instant, a searing fire that consumed every part of me, and then, nothing. It was all gone. One moment I was a soldier in a truck, gripping my rifle. The next I was weightless, a silent observer floating in the dusty air. I felt a strange release, as if a heavy coat I'd worn my whole life had suddenly been lifted off my shoulders. I looked down and saw the wreckage. The truck was a twisted mess of burning metal. And there, being pulled from the fire by my comrades, was my own body. It was broken, lifeless. I could see their mouths open, their faces twisted in horror, screaming my name, but I couldn't hear a single sound. It was like watching a movie with the volume turned off. The chaos was all around me, but I was in a place of perfect, silent clarity. The war, the hate, the duty, it had all vanished. I was just watching, completely detached from the man I used to be. The medics arrived, their movements frantic and desperate. They laid my body on the ground and started working, shouting things I couldn't hear, pushing on a chest that would not respond. I knew it was useless. I felt a strange sense of pity for them, for their effort. I was already gone. I tried to tell them to say, "It's okay, stop," but I had no voice. I was a ghost at my own death scene. Later, after it was all over, they told me I had been gone for 23 minutes. 23 minutes where my heart didn't beat, where my lungs held no air. As I watched them fight for a body I no longer inhabited, I felt a new sensation. It was a gentle but irresistible pull, lifting me away from the scene. The dusty road, the burning truck, the frantic medics. It all started to shrink below me, fading into a single point of darkness. I was leaving the world I knew behind. The pull grew stronger, drawing me upward and away from the chaos of the earth. I didn't know where I was going, but for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid. I was being taken somewhere else, toward a destination I could not yet see. The darkness wasn't a tunnel. It was more like the world I knew was a curtain, and someone was pulling it away to reveal what was behind it. A light grew in front of me, but it wasn't like the sun. It didn't blind me. It was warm, like stepping into a perfectly heated room, and it felt alive, humming with a peace that soaked right through me. The searing pain from the bomb was gone, replaced by a feeling of wholeness I'd never known. For a moment, I saw my grandfather who died when I was a boy. He didn't speak, just smiled a peaceful welcome as I moved past him, drawn toward the source of that living light. I came to a stop in a place that had no walls and no ceiling, yet it felt more solid and real than the earth I had just left. The ground beneath my feet felt like warm sand, and the air I was breathing was the light itself. There was a sense of being home, a feeling so deep it erased every memory of the war, the hate, the duty. I was just there, stripped of my uniform, my rank, my religion. For the first time, I felt like I was truly myself, and I knew with absolute certainty that I was not alone in that place of perfect peace. Then, the light in front of me gathered itself, taking the form of a man. My mind, still a soldier's mind, tried to analyze him. He had the dark skin of a man who worked in the sun, not the pale face from Western pictures. His eyes were dark, and they held a fire and a sadness I couldn't comprehend. His hands were calloused, like a carpenter's. My brain screamed the name Isa, but my soul knew a deeper truth. This was not just a prophet. This was the source of all the light. My knees buckled, and I fell to the ground, weeping uncontrollably, not from sadness, but because I was being seen and loved completely. He looked down at me, and there was no judgment in his eyes, only a profound grief, as if my whole life of fighting for the wrong cause had personally wounded him. Then he spoke my name, and his voice was like thunder and a father's whisper all at once. "Amir," he said, and the sound of my own name from his lips remade me. "I have been waiting for you." He reached down, not to lift me up, but to steady my soul. "It is time for you to see the truth. There are things I must show you that you will take back with you." He spoke to me not with anger, but with the sorrow of a king watching his beloved people held captive by a lie. The first thing he showed me wasn't a judgment of my sins, but a vision. I saw my village, my home. I saw my mother on her prayer rug, her face etched with sincere devotion. I saw her prayers, and the prayers of my father and my friends, rising from their hearts like pure white incense. They were beautiful, filled with love and hope. But then, my perspective was pulled back, and I saw a dark, spiritual veil stretched over my entire land, like a filthy canopy. As the prayers reached it, they didn't pass through. They were absorbed, their energy redirected. I watched in horror as the pure intention of those prayers, prayers for peace, for health, for God's blessing, was twisted. It was like watching pure water being poured into a poisoned well. That spiritual darkness was feeding on their sincerity, using their devotion to strengthen its own grip over them. Jesus stood beside me, his sadness a tangible force. He spoke, and his words broke my heart. "They are praying sincerely, Amir," he said, "but not to the Father. A thief has intercepted what was meant for me." In that moment, I understood what the scriptures mean when they say even Satan disguises himself as an angel of light. My people were bowing to a deceiver. Then, the vision changed. He showed me the faces of the men I was trained to hate. I saw an American soldier in his dusty tent, clutching a worn photo, tears in his eyes as he prayed for his family back home. I saw an Israeli mother in Jerusalem, lighting a candle and weeping for her son on the front lines. And in both visions, I saw Jesus standing right there beside them, his hand on their shoulder, weeping with them. "These are not your enemies, Amir," he told me, his voice gentle but firm. "They are my children, blinded and in pain, just like you were. The real enemy made you hate each other, so you would never see me in their faces." I have to pause for a moment. Can you feel the weight of that? To learn in the same instant that your family's love was being stolen and your life's hatred was a complete lie, manufactured by the same spiritual enemy. It was more than my soul could handle. If what I'm sharing is reaching your heart, please take a second to like this video and tell me in the comments if you believe this spiritual battle is real. The shame that washed over me was like a physical wave, knocking the breath from my spirit. My whole life as a soldier, my honor, my duty, it was all a lie, and I had served the wrong side. I understood then that my love for my family and my hatred for my enemies were both being used by the same dark power. My sincerity didn't protect me. It was the very thing being exploited. This realization shattered me completely. But this was just the beginning. I understood that my entire life had been built on a foundation of deception. What Jesus showed me next wasn't just about me, or my family, or even my enemies. It was about the entire spiritual system controlling over 1 billion people, and it was more terrifying than any war I had ever fought on earth. My sincerity had been a weapon used against me, my life's purpose, a complete lie. But what Jesus showed me next went far beyond my own story. He pulled my perspective back, away from the earth, and I saw it. It was a vast, dark spiritual web, a canopy of shadow stretched over the entire Middle East. It wasn't made of smoke or clouds. It was woven from threads of ancient religious laws, generations of cultural pride, and a deep, binding fear. He showed me how this structure worked, acting like a spiritual dome to block the pure light of the gospel from ever reaching the hearts of the people below. It was a prison for the soul, and I watched as it whispered lies into the hearts of millions. Lies that God is distant and angry, that his love must be earned through rituals and works, that he is a master to be feared, not a father to be loved. I turned to Jesus, my spirit aching, and asked, "Why? Why would you allow this fortress?" He looked at me, his grief a tangible thing, and said, "It is a fortress built to keep my children from knowing they are my children. It was built by the thief, but its walls are now cracking." Then, the vision shifted. He focused my sight on my homeland, on Iran. "Do not despair, Amir," he said, and his voice was suddenly filled with a triumphant fire. "For I have a covenant with the people of ancient Persia." As he spoke, I saw the dark canopy over Iran begin to fracture. Thin cracks appeared, and then light, pure and brilliant, burst through in 1,000 places at once. I saw young people huddled in basements in Tehran, their faces lit by a single phone as they worshipped him. I saw families being secretly baptized in rivers, their joy a silent explosion in the spiritual darkness. The light spread like a wildfire that couldn't be stopped. Jesus' voice rose with power, a declaration that shook the very foundations of that place. "The world sees a rogue state, but I see a nation on the brink of the greatest revival in its history. I will set my throne in Elam, just as I promised my prophet Jeremiah. A new Persian army will rise, not with guns and hate, but with the gospel in their hands, and they will carry my name to the nations." The hope was so explosive, so complete, that it felt like my spirit would shatter from the sheer force of it. Finally, he showed me one last thing, the peace that connected everything. He showed me the wars, the riots in the streets, the political tension that filled the news, and I understood. "This chaos you see," he explained, his voice gentle but firm, is the sound of the old kingdom breaking. The darkness is thrashing in its death throes because it knows its time is short. Do not fear the violence you see on your screens. See it as the birth pains of a new dawn for your people. The weight of it all, the stolen prayers, the coming revival, the meaning of the war, it was too much. I collapsed, weeping at his feet. I cried for my lost years, for my people still trapped in the dark, and for the sheer, undeserved goodness of the King who stood before me. He let me weep, letting the horror and the hope wash through me all at once. The visions faded, but his presence remained. He looked right into my soul, his eyes burning with a new intensity. What he said next wasn't a vision or a revelation. It was a command. It was the reason he had brought me there, and it was the reason I was not allowed to stay. The visions faded, but his presence remained, his eyes burning with a new fire, a look of purpose instead of grief. Go back, Amir, he commanded, his voice echoing with an authority that left no room for argument. Your war is not over. Your battlefield has simply changed. My entire spirit recoiled in panic. No, I pleaded, the words tearing from me. Please, I can't go back there, not after seeing this. Let me stay here with you. Why me? Send someone else, anyone. The thought of returning to that world of dust and hate after standing in this living light felt like a punishment I couldn't bear. He looked at me, not with anger at my refusal, but with a love that steadied my terrified soul. Because you were a soldier, you understand the battle, he said, his voice gentle but unyielding. Because your faith was sincere, your people will know your testimony is not born of hate, but of a broken heart made whole. They need to hear it from one of their own. He placed a hand on my spirit, and the warmth of it sealed my purpose within me. Go and tell them what you have seen. Tell my people in Iran that I have not forgotten them. Tell the world I am coming for them. The moment he finished speaking, the pull was violent, like being sucked backward through a straw. The piece shattered into a million pieces, replaced by an explosion of pure agony. I gasped, and my lungs filled with fire. The silent, peaceful world was gone, and in its place was the screaming of machines, the frantic shouting of men, and the crushing weight of my own broken body. I was trapped in flesh again, and every nerve screamed in protest. The pain was a roaring testament that I was alive, and for a horrible moment, I wished I wasn't. The contrast was an unbearable shock to my soul. My eyes fluttered open to see a medic's face hovering over me, his own eyes wide with disbelief. He's back, he yelled to the others. He's got a pulse. I tried to speak, my throat raw and choked with dust. I had to tell him. I had to tell someone what I had seen, who had sent me back. I saw Isa, I managed to rasp out, the name feeling foreign on my tongue. Jesus, he sent me. The medic just shook his head, patting my arm. Easy now, soldier. You took a hard hit. The bomb, it can play tricks on the mind. And that was the first time I realized my mission would be a war of its own. That medic was just the beginning. When I was stable enough to speak, I tried to tell my family. I spoke of Jesus, of the light, of the truth he had shown me about our faith. But they didn't see a man who had been to heaven and back. They saw a son whose mind had been shattered by an explosion. They wept. They begged me to be silent. My father, a man of great honor, looked at me with a mixture of fear and pity. Amir, he pleaded, this talk will get you killed. Forget this madness. They disowned me, not out of hate, but out of a desperate fear for what the regime would do to a soldier who spoke such blasphemy. My commanders were not so kind. I was interrogated for weeks. They didn't believe I was crazy. They believed I was a traitor. The Americans have gotten to you, my commanding officer screamed, his face inches from mine. They have filled your head with their Christian poison. They threatened me with execution. They told me if I ever spoke of what I saw again, I would disappear, and my family would suffer for my treason. The very spiritual darkness Jesus had shown me now had a face, a uniform, and a gun pointed at my head. I was completely alone, silenced by the very system I had once been willing to die for. For years, I lived in that silence, and the weight of it was crushing. I tried to write it down, but a paralyzing fear would stop me. I tried to record myself, but the equipment would mysteriously fail. Night after night, I had heavy, oppressive dreams, feeling that same darkness trying to suffocate the mission Jesus had given me. Then one night, I woke up in a cold sweat, and his words echoed in my soul as clearly as the day he spoke them. Go and tell them. I realized my fear was a cage, and my silence was a victory for the enemy. The mission was more important than my life. That's why I'm speaking to you now, risking everything. The intensity of the resistance I faced was the final proof I needed. Think about it. Why would my family, my government, and even unseen spiritual forces fight so hard to silence a simple story? Because it isn't just a story. It is the truth. A truth so powerful that the kingdom of darkness will do anything to keep it hidden. They tried to silence me because they are terrified of you hearing what Jesus revealed. They know that this truth, once it takes root in your heart, has the power to set you free. So I am speaking to you now, risking everything, because the mission Jesus gave me is more important than my life. What I saw on the other side is not a story, it is a reality. He sent me back to tell you the truth. A great spiritual battle is raging for the soul of the Middle East, and my beloved Iran is the epicenter. The sincere prayers of my people are being stolen by a deceiver. The hate you see between nations is a lie manufactured by the true enemy, and Jesus sent me back because he needs you to know this. Maybe you watch the news and your heart sinks. You see the chaos, the anger, the threats of war, and you feel hopeless. But Jesus showed me that what you are seeing are the birth pains of a new dawn. That spiritual fortress of darkness over my land is cracking, and the violence is just the death rattle of a defeated enemy. He told me not to fear the headlines, but to see them as a sign that a great revival is coming. He asks you to stop seeing politics and start seeing prophecy unfolding right before your eyes. Perhaps you have someone you love, a friend, a neighbor, a family member, who is a devout Muslim just as I was. You see their sincerity, and it breaks your heart because you know they are lost in the dark. Jesus showed me he has not forgotten them. He is coming for them. The most powerful thing you can do is pray. Pray specifically that the spiritual veil over their eyes would be torn. Pray that Jesus would reveal himself to them in a dream or a vision, just as he did for me. Your prayers are the light that breaks through the cracks. If this message has reached your heart, please share this video with someone who needs to see that there is hope. Subscribe to this channel to hear more about what God is doing. But most importantly, I am begging you to join this fight. Pray for the people of Iran. And if you are a Muslim watching this, my brother, my sister, I plead with you with all that I am. Tonight, in the quiet of your room, just ask Isa to show you the truth. He is waiting to finally answer the prayer that was always meant for him.